Hello and welcome to Scale Stuff. In this week's video I'm going to be building and reviewing the Airfix 176 scale 25 pounder field gun and Morris quad kit. Another now vintage classic model for the convoy in the cabinet. I was mostly drawn to this kit for the Morris quad, as by the look of it, it's an interesting looking, rather squat truck, not like anything else that I've built so far. Anyway, let's take a look at what's in the box. In the box you get a black and white instruction sheet and paint guide, two small sprues to build the model, and a small sheet of decals to complete the model. A first quick look at the sprues is showing the classic vintage Airfix look, and yeah, all of the sins I'm used to on a kit of this age. There's some flash, there's some ejection pin marks, and a few weird looking lips on some of the parts. It's all easily dealt with though, and will just require a light sand. I guess a lot of this stuff's part of the fun. The figures seem to have got the worst of the flash, and yeah, they're not great by modern standards, but I'm sure with a bit of work they'll come up just fine. This kit dates back to 1963 when this model was first released, which explains the extra vintage look of these sprues. This model has been re-released many times over the years since. This is a 2005 re-release, which doesn't sound that long ago, but it's been nearly 20 years at the time of making this video. Anyway, quick look out the way, let's get on with the build. First thing on the menu is the base. Here I've already cleaned up all the flash and parts, of which there was quite a lot of flash on these models to be fair. First thing to do is add these seats. These go in a bit floaty, and yeah, it's not 100% clear where they're actually meant to end up. But I doubt it makes much of a difference, as I get the feeling you won't be seeing much of these seats once the truck's all built through the tiny little windows. With the seats on, now it's time to add the sides. These go on all right, but need a little bit of tweaking and bending to get them to fit right. Even with them flush and in position, there's still a small gap between the front fender and the chassis. Though, again, I don't imagine this will cause much issue. With these bits on, I'm going to leave this bit to dry for a good while so it's safer to handle. Now it's time for a few little bits of pre-painting. Though I don't think much of it will be on show, I'm going to give the internal panel areas a quick coat of Tamiya olive drab just to make sure anything that is on show isn't obviously unpainted. With the olive drab dry, now I'm giving the seats a quick coat in XF60 dark yellow. I'm not too concerned about doing a great job here, just yeah, getting some colours down into the cab, just in case it is obvious later on. Pre-painting out of the way, it's back to assembly. This for the most part goes together fairly easily. The fits are a little bit vague, more of a place it on and butt it up and see what you've got. But yeah, they go together all right for the most part. Normally I like to add the windshields onto these kits. I like to do it myself out of plastic bits of old plastic food packaging. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it on this model as yeah, it's a bit tricky to sort out and it's got too many angles. So yeah, this one's going to have to be glassless, unfortunately. One bit to take care with here is the bonnet of the truck, as this bit needs a bit of back and forth to get it on nice and flush. The basic shape of the truck starting to come together. There's also a wheel to add in this step, but I'm going to leave that off to make painting the truck easier later on. With those bits on, it's time to add a few more details to the model. Here I'm adding the axles, but again leaving the wheels off to aid in painting later on. All of the bits here go on easily, but make sure to keep an eye on the rear of the fenders when you add them, as having no attachment points it would be easy to put these on too far back. With those final bits on though, that completes the Morris Quad build for now. Next it's on to making the ammunition caddy for the gun. This goes together quite well, all the sides sort of butt up against each other nicely. There are a few small gaps in the corners of the joins though. I think age has rounded out a few of the corners over the years, but these gaps are behind the wheels and yeah, they won't be seen. Again, with the wheels, they're staying off until they're painted. Now it's on to making the gun. This is easy to make, but the fit between the two gun parts is a little naff. I'm going to add a little bull clip to the muzzle area to hold this together while it dries. Adding the other bits is nice and easy, but the build here is a little delicate. With the gun together, I'm also going to add a clip to the breech to make sure the gun doesn't open up while it's drying. Once this is dry, I'm going to clean up the join between the two gun halves and get rid of the seam line down there. Then it's on to adding the gun to the main carriage. It's just a little step here and simple to do, but again will benefit from a good bit of drying time to make sure these parts are safer to handle in the next step. Finally, it's time to put the last bits of the gun together to complete the build of the model. There are also figures to add here, but I won't be adding them to their bases as I'm going to make a base for the gun, so yeah, they'll show up later on in the build. Here the parts are pretty easy to add, nothing really of note to watch out for other than try not to use too much glue when building this, like with all models really. On this I'm actually adding the wheels on this step as I need them on the axle to complete the build and don't want to risk having things out of alignment when the glue dries. This gun's really got quite a nice little charm to it. I'm not sure what it is, but yeah, it looks quite nice as it's coming together. With the gun build though, that completes the build stage of this model, other than the figure cleanup that I'll be doing off screen. This is how the model's looking before starting painting, with all its wheels off. At the moment, the kit would look more at home in a scrap heap than in a war zone. Now it's time to put a base coat down. For this I'm using Humbrol 155 Olive Drab. I've gone back on my idea of not putting the wheels on this model as I've managed to get them on so that they spin so I can get into all the nooks and crannies with them on the model. So yeah, painting them shouldn't be a problem. As always, I'm spraying this kit up off screen and outside to avoid fumigating myself. Base coat on, first thing I'm sorting out is the tyres on the model. For this I'm using Vallejo matte black and just taking my time, as even though I've got the wheels moving, the paint seems to have, yeah, gunked them up a little bit and they're a bit tricky to move. While the wheels are drying, I'm giving the figures uniform a quick coat of Tamiya khaki. The details on these figures is a bit poor, classic 60s kit stuff really, and yeah, they look a little bit lumpy in parts, but they'll look passable from a distance. Like, I didn't say how far a distance, 2 miles, they'd look perfect. After painting the faces off screen, I'm picking out the straps on the figures in skeleton bone. I don't normally film small figure painting as yeah, they're too fiddly and they're pretty basic. But as there's not much going on in this kit, I'll show you how I do them, not that there's much to it. Then it's on to adding the decals. The decals in this kit are not great, they're very brittle and crumble easily. I think they might have spoiled with age. The decals are nice and thin though and do mould well into the model. In all fairness, if they survive the dry brushing stage, it'll be nice to have a bit of detail on the tractor. Now it's time for the truck's dry brush. For this first coat I'm using the tried and tested Army Painter Skeleton Bone. This dry brush trashes all but most of the decals on this model, turning them to complete dust. I'm just going to press on. For anyone wondering why the end of my finger is completely white in this video, I had a good go at trying to cut off the end of my finger while gardening, so watched out for the botched finger in other videos to get an idea of just how jumbled the video releases on this channel because it's going to crop up in about 5 videos in weird stages. With the dry brush on now, it's time to give the model a wash. For this I'm using watered down Vallejo Dunkel Gold as I wanted to try something new on the model. Next it's time for another wash, this time in the form of a targeted thin wash with matte black. I'm doing this firstly over the grille, as on the real trucks this is a mesh and looks a lot darker. And then I'm going around with this wash in all the panel lines and around all the doors, as the detail on this model isn't the greatest and I want what little detail that is there to stand out. This model really needed a wash to kind of bring up some detail on it. I moved away from black washes a while ago in favour of more dark browns, but yeah, I'm going back to black on this one because it needs that heavy contrast. Then it's on to adding a bit of dirt to the model. For this I'm giving the truck a quick light dry brush with BS Dark Earth because I just can't get enough of the stuff. I swear I get through so much BS Dark Earth, it's ridiculous. This and Skeleton Bone. Yeah, if anyone wants to sponsor my Skeleton Bone and BS Dark Earth consumption, I'm all ears. Now all that there is to do on the model is make a stand for the gun. For this I'm using my tried and tested peanut butter lid cut down as a base. I much prefer putting the guns and AA guns on bases as it makes moving them in the cabinet so much easier. Once this is cut out, off screen I spray it with a coat of Humbrol 155 olive drab. Once the spray paint's dry, I paint on some PVA glue with an old brush, then scatter some wood chip flock around the base. I know there are better flocks around nowadays, but I like the retro look for these retro models. Once the base is dry, I'm gluing the figures around the gun. To be honest, the gun looks more complete with the crew milling about it. Anyway, with the crew and gun based, that's the model complete. This is the finished model. I like the way this model has come together in the end, but it sure took its sweet time to actually come together. In conclusion, the Airfix Morris Quad and 25-pounder gun is an alright kit. The kit goes together alright for the most part, but there are quite a few bits that need a fair bit of tweaking to get them to go together. The detail on this kit seems also to be a little bit lacking, though to give the kit its due, with regards to the truck in real life, it's pretty plain. However, on the Italeri kit of the same subject, both the truck and the figures look better moulded, which I never thought I'd say, as I really don't like Italeri kits a lot of the time and I've had a lot of trouble with them in the past. This kit is still fun to make though, and could be made by most modelers, though I would suggest complete beginners give this model a miss, as the cleanup might prove to be a little bit frustrating and a little bit off-putting. There are better vintage classics with less cleanup on them. I still enjoyed making and painting this model though, and think the end product's got a certain charm to it. After making most of the vintage classic lineup of trucks and vehicles over the last year or so, I'm very much used to the things these kits throw at me now, and yeah, sometimes I even miss the challenge on really easy to make modern kits. I picked up this kit for a little less than a £5. It goes for about £7 on the Airfix website, and to be honest, for this price it's well worth the money. Just don't get caught short by the price scalpers selling older boxed versions of this kit for £20 on eBay, which is what I saw when I went to check the price of this for this video. Anyway, that's my build and review of the Airfix 176 scale Morris Quad and 25-pounder gun. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video and find it helpful if you're building or thinking of buying one of these kits at home. If you made it this far, please consider subscribing, as it really helps the channel out. Until next time though, look after yourselves and have a good one. Goodbye.